Think of this if you will. I could have been watching the Olympics. I could have watched Europeans choke in a $20 million tournament. But instead, I'm taking the initiative to follow a procedurally generated soap opera. Of course, I'm talking about No Man's Sky by Hello Games. There was a lot of hype for the game earlier, but then the game came out and it just fell flat. But is it really that bad? Let me give you my perspective. The ultimate goal of the game, as far as I know, is to make it to the center of the universe. Why are we doing this? If you progress far enough, you'll find out. Every planet can be explored, and I see this as a bad thing because there is no planet here that is too hostile to explore. There is no risk of burning up on your descent or being crushed to death by the gravity or any number of things that an astronomer can explain in detail. You can find many points of interest on the planet, such as outposts, ancient ruins, shelters, and so on. When you activate a beacon, you're given credit for discovering it first. Does that make sense to anyone? You're discovering outposts, some of which have an alien you can talk to. It has functioning doors and equipment, and yet you are the first to discover it. I'm confused, but let's just pretend it makes sense. Much of the game is primarily about exploration. One of the things you'll be doing very frequently in the game is managing your inventory, and it's also one of the most annoying things in the game. There's no way to sort the inventory automatically, and you can't even sort it manually when your inventory is full. Your equipment, such as your jetpack and the life support system, takes up an inventory slot. Same thing with your ship. If you need to make room in your inventory, you can't just drop items on the ground and sort everything out from there. Much of the UI in the game is just messed up. Some things you can click on, and some things require you to hold it down. On the map screen, you have to rotate the cursor to select a nearby system. I never thought I'd be so pissed off at the inability to just click on something. How do you screw up a point-and-click interface? Now we know. Make us hold it down for no reason and make it inconsistent. It drives me nuts. The crafting is even worse. You need an empty space in your inventory for the resulting item to go in, and if you're crafting an ingredient for another recipe, you need yet another empty space. You have to discover new recipes to create the items you need, especially to craft your own fuel for the hyperdrive, but you also need to find the recipes for weapon augments, and these augments also take up space in your inventory. The problem is alleviated a bit as you acquire ships with more space and upgrade your exosuit, but we have games like this still in alpha that avoid this problem altogether, and it shouldn't have been a problem here either. Even with this system, there's a lot that could have been done to alleviate these issues and make it more enjoyable to play. For things like bypass chips, if you don't already have one in your inventory, they should be automatically crafted when you want to use a device that requires one. Very simple things like that. You make money in many different ways. You upload your discoveries in exchange for money, such as the systems and the planets. If you discover all of the different species on a planet, you can upload them for a huge sum of money. The way I've been doing it is mining rare elements and selling them on the galactic market. It's the easiest, but it's also the most mundane. The money is then used to buy bigger ships with larger inventory space. Every now and then, space pirates will appear to attack a neutral ship in the vicinity, or they attack you directly. You can destroy them and sell the items they drop. Space combat is supposed to be fun, right? Well, not here. The game only gives you access to a couple energy weapons for your ship. You don't get to have missiles or mass cannons. Your shields can also be recharged to full, even in combat. You can abuse that by carrying a lot of oxides for the recharge, and there is no limit to how much you can do this as long as you have the resources for it. They really simplified the capabilities of your ship and the combat in general, and yet they made the ship's movement unnecessarily complicated by having 3 different types of drives that require 3 different types of fuel. So I have to refuel the launch thrusters after using them 4 times. Even the most realistic space sims only require 1 type of fuel, and that's if they require fuel. So here they limit the weapons, which is the fun part of space combat, but they overcomplicate the fuel management. I don't understand. Even the on-foot combat is bland. You have a multi-tool that is a 3-in-1 mining laser, boltcaster, and grenade launcher, depending on how you set up the augments. You mainly fight against the sentinels, which usually guard the points of interest, but on some planets the wildlife is hostile towards you. All you really do is shoot them until they die. There's no depth to the combat, no sidestepping attacks, no strengths or weaknesses versus different weapons, not even a stupid gimmick that gets old. The first fight you get into tells you everything you need to know. In some places you can talk to aliens and you have a choice of actions, so it has that element of role-playing here, but this is where it gets really annoying. You have the cinematic zoom-in, the slow appearance of the alien text, followed by the English description of the interaction and the dialogue options. This takes around 8 to 10 seconds before you can even do anything, and it's unskippable. Every single time. Have they not learned from games made in the past 2 decades that this is bad? I can get through entire conversations quickly in many 90s RPGs because they give you the option to speed up conversations. Forget about the lack of information on what this game is supposed to be about. This is a game that doesn't even get the basics down. The inventory and the crafting system is just really annoying to work with. The interactions with the aliens are not only simple, but unnecessarily tedious. The whole game takes the resource gathering of Minecraft and similar games, but leaves out the really fun part of using what you've crafted to build and shape the world around you. It takes the combat and the upgrading from games like Elite Dangerous, and it really scales it down to a couple of weapons, and you're simply crafting augments for them to make your ship more powerful. It simplifies a lot of great things and removes the fun from them, yet overcomplicates others that don't need it and makes you jump through hoops for no reason. I hear you're supposed to have a good imagination to enjoy this game, but it's hard to become immersed when it continuously slaps you around a bit with a large trout. Oh, what's that? I talked to 5 aliens? I made this much money? I walked this distance on foot? Nobody cares! Except for this game, which just has to give you those black bars and block your vision with this accomplishment. This is the kind of thing that should have been shown at the bottom of the screen, you play a sound, and that's it. It's not supposed to interrupt me just to tell me this, and it happens a lot. I don't see any way of turning it off. I know there's a lot of people enjoying this game, and I can understand why they continue to play it, but you really have to try hard to enjoy it. I suppose it could be worse, but it is what it is. You're grinding away to upgrade your ship and your exosuit with a terrible UI to deal with, and the whole game is just shallow anyway. Despite the bajillion planets, or whatever they said was in the game, all the landmarks on every planet begin to look the same after a couple of hours. This is where my journey ends. I never want to speak to another alien again, unless I can skip to the important parts. But more than that, I think we have something to discuss in the analysis. I noticed a lot of the interviews with Sean Murray don't seem to line up with what's in the game. Many of the elements claimed to be in the game months ago in interviews is nowhere to be found, and these have been identified by the community. A big part of the game being advertised was survival, but you're not really surviving anything. You don't have to deal with food or water or even hostile environments to a large extent thanks to your shields. Many of the mechanics in the game shown in the trailers and the interviews were simplified, and this all happened in the last 4 months leading up to its release. It had a very deep and complex resource and crafting system, faction alliances, and large-scale ship battles between them. Even an instantaneous dialogue system with the aliens. Why did they remove that? It was perfect! That should have stayed in the game, and that's just to name a few. There were so many things that were downgraded and made worse with no logical explanation. The entire game was better before it came out, and these were things shown in the game 4 months ago. I can't help but wonder why everything was simplified and in such a short time span. So for the first few weeks, I expect a good amount of drama. It'll probably be more interesting than this game, if I'm being really honest. A lot of questions will be answered, and they won't be very good answers. And of course, there will be a few patches to fix many of the minor bugs that exist. I'm pretty sure we all know where this game is going in a few months. This game will be dead, and everything they do to try and support it will be in vain. When the game launched, Sean Murray said in an interview that there would be no paid DLC. There would be free patches that include new content. But then a new interview came out and has him backtracking on that statement. So paid DLC is still up in the air, and I'm thinking the price tag is not his call to make. Regardless of whether it will be paid or not, what will it be? In order to add content to a procedurally generated universe, you have to change the algorithm. Even the smallest change will produce wildly different results and transform entire planets and systems. It's not like in other games where you can simply start a new world from scratch. This universe is persistent and it has to keep track of everyone's discoveries, so the only things I can see being added are new ships, new weapons, new recipes, and possibly new quests. Basically anything that is independent on system and planet generation. There's a lot of speculation on what it will be, but I'd rather not mention them considering all the things that's supposed to be in the game that's been taken out. It's near impossible to predict. By the time it comes out in a few months, I highly doubt most of you will care anyway. No Man's Sky has a lot of potential to be a great game, but there's simply too many things that are annoying to deal with. A simple playtest should have wiped out most of these problems. Some of them weren't present when it was shown 4 months ago, but others are too deeply ingrained within the game design. Gameplay trumps realism, but if they're not going for the realism route, they could at least make the game not so frustrating to play. A game which revolves around managing an inventory should not make it a hassle to manage the inventory. There's at least a dozen games with a crafting system and procedural world generation that are still in alpha, and they have vastly superior crafting and inventory systems. I would love to play a game like this, just not this game, and when you're asking for $60 to play this, I think there are way better options out there. We'll follow up on the game in a few months and we'll see what happens. Thanks for watching.